But right now I want to bring in Bill Johnson. Bill Johnson serves as the Director of Educational Technology at Concordia Theological Seminary in Fort Wayne. And Bill's been doing a lot with redesigning the seminary website and leaned heavily on the analytics from the website, kind of seeing all the measurements of who's coming and where they're coming from to kind of help their rebuild of the site, to help prioritize what they needed to do in that next rebuild. So I'm excited to have Bill here to kind of present on that subject right now. So I'll hand it over to him. Thanks, Bill.
All right. Hey, thanks, Seth. Thanks for having me, and thanks for taking the time to put this together. This has been a long-term vision and a lot of fun. I'm going to go ahead and share my monitor, but while that's coming up and we're getting all those pieces going, you know, we talk a lot, especially here at the seminary. People come to the communication department and they want a video, or they want a particular website piece, or those sorts of things. And what they discovered very quickly is I'm going to have two questions for them. Who are you talking to, and what is it they need to hear from you? And if they can define their audience and they can define the message that they're trying to get out there, then we have something we can work with, and we can begin to look at content channels and a lot of those things Peter just talked about. But this is a little bit more on the backside of that. What happens after you've done that? You put your communication out there, you put your website out there. How do you know who you're actually reaching? We know who we wanted to reach, but how do we know who's actually getting there? And so this is going to be real basic, real nuts and bolts. We're not going to delve into even really a fraction of what Google Analytics can do. We could literally spend hours here and we don't have it. So in 20 minutes or less, how do we get started with Google Analytics? First part is you're going to go to analytics.google.com. You can see that there in the address bar at the top. And when you sign up, you can log in with a Google account. Doesn't matter, doesn't have to be a Gmail account, whatever. It's going to ask you to accept the terms of service, that kind of thing. And one of the things it's immediately going to give you is a piece of code, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump to it so you can see it real quick. This little bit of JavaScript right here that Google's going to provide for you that you need to put on every page in your website. Now, hopefully you're on a content management system of some sort where you can just go ahead and insert that into your footer region, or it really, in a perfect world, that is going to live right below the body tag, the close tag of your body of your website, and then it'll just get replicated through your template to every page out there. If you are still manually doing that, if you've still got kind of a site you're manually updating and there's not a content management system, that can get to be pretty burdensome. So I'd really suggest you move in that direction of having some kind of management system. If all of this is completely Greek to you, I know Peter said HTML is not a theological language. I disagree, just for clarity there. But if all this is completely Greek to you, go ahead and talk with your geeks. They'll know exactly what you're talking about. This is pretty easy. You just paste that in. Once you've got that, you're going to start to get data. And I'm actually just going to jump to the real-time data. This is a fascinating display. If you come to the seminary homepage right now, you know, and we'll see if a bunch of people jump on there and do that or not. Right now, I've got 6 people on the page. A bunch of them are in Fort Wayne. Somebody in Texas just jumped on. And so you can see in real time who's coming. You can see what pages they're looking at, what's going on there. And that's useful. It's kind of fun to look at. And if you've got an event going on, so if you're doing something like this conference, during our call day services, for example, it was a lot of fun to watch and see this map expand actually from just the US to worldwide and be able to see people around the world tuning into what we were doing. This is fun, and like I said, for events, super useful. However, for that longer term question, who is our audience? Who are we actually reaching? Who do we need to design for? Where you're going to want to live is really in this audience tab over here on the left. There, when we jump to the overview here, you can see I've got it set. We're looking at about the last 6 months of traffic on the seminary website. You can see pretty plainly that we kind of run a Monday to Friday schedule with weekends being a little down. And then you can also see we've got a peak here when our vicarage and call placement services happen, as a lot of folks came to the website to find out where their friends and family were going or who their new pastor or vicar was. And so those are peaks on us throughout the year. And if I actually made this an annual graph, you'd still see that peak every year. That's a high traffic time for us. And you start to get a sense for, okay, how many numbers are we putting up in terms of sessions? And a session here is defined as a user coming and actively being engaged in the site. If they visit one page, if they visit 20 pages, Google's still tracking that as one session. So, and then you can see, sort of number of users, how many pages have been viewed, that kind of thing. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. One metric that's not immediately intuitive that you want to pay attention to, though, is bounce rate. Those are the people who come to your page, hit one page, and bounce right back out. And those are people where whatever it was they were looking for, whatever they were trying to connect with, they didn't find. Ours is higher than perhaps most, simply because so many of our campus computers have the seminary homepage as the homepage in the browser. And so it doesn't matter if you meant to come here or not, you're going to come and then you're going to go off to Google or whatever it is you were actually looking for. So that ends up inflating us a little bit here. As we started to redesign the seminary homepage, we really wanted to take a look, A, from an audience point of view, but then B, from a content point of view in terms of where were those audiences going? What were they chasing after? And so Google Analytics was absolutely incredible for that. We can start here in the demographic tab, and you can start to see, we haven't enabled that because it's the advertising feature, but if you're willing to do so, you've got some options there. You can see kind of what's going on, age, gender, that kind of thing. These are example pieces. We, through our Facebook groups and a few others, decided that we had enough demographics on that side of things. And way more interesting for us than were the technology pieces coming in. Right here, we get to look immediately, and one of the things we found is that we had a massive amount of people coming in when we got to operating systems. We'll look at browser in a minute, but this was really the fascinating piece for us, was how many people were coming in on iOS and Android devices. Now, the website we had before the redesign was not mobile friendly. It was entirely composed of hover menus, and every hover menu on every page linked to every other page on the site, and made it completely impossible to use. If you're on a mobile device, you could not navigate, period. And so when we look here and we see that a full quarter of our audience is coming in on a mobile platform, that's something obviously we need to fix. And so when we did the redesign, one of our immediate design goals that we're designing mobile first. We're designing so that it doesn't matter what screen size you're coming on, you'll be able to see the content, you'll be able to navigate, you'll be able to get where you want to go. As you move forward here, you can see what screen resolutions you're designing for. This was another key factor for us on the geeky side of things, because our last website was designed around the standard 1024 by 768 monitor that everybody had. Normal aspect ratio, not widescreen. And you can see here, they don't even register anymore. And so when we were designing the desktop experience, we went ahead and went for the 1280 width, and decided to make that our standard for if you're experiencing and consuming the content on a desktop computer, on a laptop, chances are you've got the screen real estate to be able to work with it. And then if not, if you're on a mobile device, if you're in some of these smaller resolutions, then the site will degrade gracefully and rework the navigation to respond to a mobile environment. You can see then what browsers people are coming in. This is pretty standard right now. A lot of the traffic on the web is living in Chrome. You're seeing Safari also coming in, and that's really being driven by a lot of your iOS devices, obviously your Mac install base. Interesting with that, both Chrome and Safari use the same backend WebKit rendering engine. So if you're able to design around those two platforms, then you've got a really good baseline for being able to fix or tweak anything happening in Firefox or Edge. And if you absolutely have to support Internet Explorer, I'll pray for you, but that's about the best we got there. So on the technology side, you can very, very quickly, just by adding that little bit of code, be able to come in and see what's going on, what's happening, and get a sense for who your users are, what kind of technology they're coming with, what kind of needs you need to design around. Take a look here at the geographic stuff, because you can also see then what's going on language-wise. The vast majority of our users are coming in with English. Got a few Russian, Portuguese presence. Part of this is coming in because we do a training program for missionaries around the world, and so as a result of that, we do get a lot of global reach from that and our graduate program. When we go into location, you can start to see what does that look like lived out on a map. Well, you can see we're not big in Greenland. It's life, you can't hit every audience. But vast majority of our folks are, of course, United States, Canada, and then you can click into any one of those and you can start to get a better sense. You know, of course, Midwest, Heartland, that's a big place for Lutherans, big place for our audience. And so we can start to get a sense of that as well. Geographically, where are these people located? Chances are most of the traffic for your church website is coming out of your town. But at the same time, if you've got programs or content that's having a more global reach, a much wider reach, then you're going to have the ability to look at that to see kind of where you're hitting, where you're missing, and what you can do with that. In terms of audience, there's a lot more here, but I've got 8 minutes or less to cover all of it. So we're going to jump to acquisition. Acquisition is the question of how do people get to your website? All right, fine, we know they're hitting there, but how are they getting there to begin with? And so you have, you know, the organic search, which is they're searching on Google or elsewhere, and they're being directed to your site in the search results. This is actually a change. I'm actually kind of surprised by this. For the longest time, direct was really our top hit on that. So this is a change, and I'm going to have to, when we're done here, I'm going to have to go explore that a little bit. Direct is people typed in your website address. They knew where they were going. They went to their address bar. They typed it in, or it was set to their homepage, whatever. They didn't get there through a search engine. Nobody emailed them a link. It wasn't social media, anything else. They just went ahead and put it in. Referral is very often, I believe, coming out of email. I'd have to see how Google defines that one. It's not a category I know as well. Social media is, of course, your Facebook, Twitter, etc. Digging into that, you can see the primary Facebook presence for the seminary is that we live and breathe on Facebook. We haven't done a lot with a lot of the other social media networks because we found that most of our core audience really does spend most of their time on Facebook. And so it's a great place for us to connect with the people we're trying to reach at this point. But you can go in here into any of these and you can see kind of what's going on. You can even, if you want to dig a little bit deeper, we can dig into Facebook here. And let's see, can we show a secondary dimension for destination page? All right, and so I can break this out and I can see, okay, not only are they coming from Facebook, but where are they ending up? Well, a lot of the traffic's going to the seminary homepage, but we also had a massive group of people that were coming for the call services. Big surprise there. Like I said, that's our big traffic spike. But then we also have our daily chapel, and we'll get to that in a minute. That is really one of our content leaders in terms of our web strategy. We discovered very early on that when we were redesigning the site and we wanted to define our core audiences, we had, of course, future students, people who are coming, interested in coming to the seminary. We had donors, we had the church at large for whom we provide a number of resources. But then we also, when we were looking at the analytics of our old site, found that one of the places that didn't neatly fit into one of those audiences were our daily chapel live streams. And so our analytics gave us that to be able to say, okay, that really needs to be a top level navigation piece. And in fact, I'm just going to show off a little bit here because I can, and our server will of course be slow right now. But our top level navigation, we immediately went and reflected that. Is God calling you, future students, donors, people who are supporting the seminary, resources for the church, and then daily chapel, which isn't really quite, like I said, just a narrowly defined audience, but it was such a drive for traffic to the website. So many people were coming and consuming that content that we knew we had to have it front and center, and so there it is. You can dig through this in all kinds of ways to see where traffic's coming from, but this will give you a sense of what's working on the advertising side, where are people seeing your content, clicking in, making that conversion over into your website, and then you can adjust accordingly. If you find Facebook advertising, Facebook isn't where your audience is living, great. Make the adjustment to what you're doing to drive traffic to your website. All right. 4 minutes or less for the most important tab in my mind anyway, behavior. When people get to your website, what are they doing? What happens when they actually arrive at your site? And we can see right away that they're landing on the home page, and that's a full third of our views. But then right after that, they're going to daily chapel. They're checking out the resources we provide. They're coming future students. They're looking at information about the MDiv program, the Deaconess program, our graduate programs, or they're checking out events. That's the top 5 right there, and that's really not a huge surprise for us. Like I said, just great content in terms of figuring out what's driving people. More interesting than that, though, if you're looking at your church website, pretty much everybody's arriving on the homepage. Great, wonderful. But what happens next? That's where behavior flow is just the place to be. All right, and what this is going to do is it's going to paint a picture for what happens. All right, so the vast majority of our people come into the homepage, and like I said, because we've got computers for all our faculty and staff set to the seminary as a homepage, we see a big drop-off. Not everybody's necessarily, when they open their browser, wants to browse the seminary homepage. But you can see, a lot of times they're coming from that, they're going to daily chapel. Sometimes they're arriving on daily chapel. They bookmarked it, something similar. Same for resources. You can see some of those other options there. But we can see, all right, so they're coming in and they're coming to future students, for example, and then they're looking at pastoral programs, and the top pastoral link is MDiv. And you can actually trace the journey all the way through. How are people coming to your site? How are they behaving once they get there? What's the traffic? Where are they interested? Another interesting example is people are coming to daily chapel, but then from that, once they're done watching chapel, they're also going and checking out our resources page. And so maybe we want to start looking at that resources page as a place to start providing further resources regarding worship, regarding those sorts of things that this audience is also going to be interested in here, to keep them digging that next step further, that next step deeper, experiencing more of the content that's available on the page. So you can do a lot of great stuff here. They've also got your site speed, which is a great tool for your web developer to take a look at. And you can see, sort of your average page load time, that kind of thing. I'll be the first to say that 8 seconds is way too long. I've got some JavaScript tuning I really need to do. But you can go through and you can see which pages are taking the longest to pop up and what's going on there. You can also then use speed suggestions, and we won't launch this because it takes a little too long to really dig at, and I may have clicked it anyway. But anyway, what it'll do is it'll go through and look at your site and say, okay, here's the things you're not doing on a tech level behind the scenes that could really improve the speed of your site. And that's everything from reducing the size of your images, to minifying your JavaScript, to looking and seeing if some of your page onload events can't be pushed until the site's totally loaded and the document's ready. And yeah, it's going to run through that entire thing. So that's the time I've got. That is Google Analytics in 20 minutes or less, getting your foot in the door. Go in and explore. There's lots of great tutorials online, lots of great options for that. And I'll hang around and chat and see if we can answer any questions as we go here. But you can see it finally finished. So if I click into that, it's going to show me the bunch of suggestions that Google has to go with our homepage. It's more than we got time for today. So either way, dig into that. Let me know if I can be of assistance. bill.johnson@ctsfw.edu. Don't have a slide for it, but you can reach me there, and I'll throw it in chat as well. Seth, anything else we need to cover there?
Bill, you dove in there pretty good there. I was learning a lot myself, so appreciate that. If somebody wanted to take that first step with Google Analytics, say maybe today's the first day they've ever heard about it, what is that first step that they would take?
First thing you're going to do is you're going to go to analytics.google.com. and you're going to sign up for an account, and they will give you that little bit of JavaScript code we showed at the beginning. Get that into your template, and either into your footer or your content management system, and it'll start tracking right away. As soon as you got that, you're good to go going forward. Okay.
So, and I've heard in the chat here, CMS systems or content management systems like Church 360 Unite,
Yep.
WordPress sites, oftentimes they'll have a little section where you can put that code right in,
Yeah,
so you don't have to do any hard coding there necessarily. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. You're looking for, often it'll say, header or footer stuff. I know that's the vocabulary WordPress uses. Peter may be able to talk about Church 360 a little bit on that one.
Yeah, Church 360 just provides a field where you put in that UA code, the Universal Analytics code, and all you put that in is you just paste it in, save it, and it'll turn it on and start tracking from that point on. And Google Analytics is far better than any analytics tool that we could build, and it's free. So that's why we leverage that.
Yeah, and if you're looking for that UA code, it's right here in the middle of your JavaScript. You can see it just below the space here. You get your UA code and you're good to go. Or it's right there at the top of the page, because that'd be way easier to see, wouldn't it?
Yep. Awesome. And I think an important note for anybody watching is that you can't go backwards. Like until you install that code, you're not going to be tracking anything on your site. So it's important to kind of get that handled maybe today, tomorrow, this week, maybe next week. So Google can start collecting all that information for you. You may not use the metrics yet, but at least Google will be turned on and everything will be start to measure. So I think that's an important note as well. Thank you, Bill. That's great.